Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. This Saturday is UFC 282, and on the prelims we have Raul Rosas Jr. versus Jay Perrin, and this is going to be my full breakdown and prediction. I've already done a bunch of UFC 282 prediction videos. I will link them all down in the description if you want to go check them out after this, and I'll also be doing a live post-fight immediately following UFC 282, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss that as well. So you have Raul Rosas Jr. versus Jay Perrin. Raul Rosas Jr. is the youngest fighter ever signed to the UFC. He went on Dana White's Contender Series at 17 years old, gets a win, gets signed to the UFC, and now he's making his UFC debut against Jay Perrin at UFC 282 on the prelims. And this is going to be a very intriguing fight because I believe that Raul Rosas Jr. is getting a massive step up in competition. Jay Perrin is no easy fight. And if Raul Rosas Jr. loses his UFC debut, not that he's not young, not that he can't improve, not that he can't rebuild, but a lot of that hype that he has right now, being the youngest fighter ever signed to the UFC, will go away. And it's going to be hard to build that back. He will be able to because he's still so young. But Jay Perrin, if he loses, he's going to be a grown man essentially losing to a kid at 18 years old. So for Jay Perrin, he's already winless in the UFC. He's had some competitive fights, but this is kind of a must-win for him. I mean, I can't imagine being almost 30 years old and going out there and losing to an 18-year-old. I couldn't imagine that. So this is a big fight for him. And also, there's something to be said for stealing someone's hype. I always talked about when it seemed like nobody wanted to fight Khamzat Chimaev, I was like, why would you not want to fight him? I get it. Maybe they're worried about losing or stylistically it's a bad matchup. But why would you want to not be the guy that derails that hype train? And if Jay Perrin can go out there and derail the hype train of Raul Rosas Jr., not that it's a huge hype train, but it does exist, that would be a massive win for him and people would remember his name just off of beating Raul Rosas Jr. So this is going to be a very interesting fight. I think stylistically, either one of these guys can win this fight. And it would not shock me if Jay Perrin goes out there and makes Raul Rosas Jr. look like he doesn't even belong in the UFC. But we'll get to my prediction in a second. If you look at the tail of the tape, Rosas Jr. is 6-0. Jay Perrin is 10-6. Neither one of these fighters is ranked. Rosas Jr. is now 18 years old. Jay Perrin is 29. Rosas is 5'9", Perrin is 5'7". Rosas has a 67-inch reach, and Perrin has a 69-inch reach. So a 2-inch reach advantage for Jay Perrin. If you look at Raul Rosas Jr.'s resume, he's 6-0 in MMA, doesn't have a lot of experience. The resume leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, he's fighting a guy who was 0-1 at the time he fought him. He fought a guy that had no fights. He fought a guy who was 1-0, fought a guy who was 2-0, fought a guy who was 0-2, and then on the Dana White's Contender Series, he fought a guy who was 7-1, Mando Gutierrez, and this wasn't an easy fight for him. He won via decision. He went out there. He looked pretty impressive, but obviously he's still very young, has a lot to work on. But he went out there and basically out-grappled him for the majority of the fight. He landed some good shots. He made some mistakes and ended up in some bad positions, but then he would scramble, get back into a better position against Mando, look for submissions, looking for rear naked chokes, land some good ground and pound. At one point, he threw a flying knee, I think, in the first round, and then ducked under for a double leg. He showed a lot of, fundamentals in this fight that you can say, okay, he's only 18 years old now. How is he going to look in 3-4 years? Because he looks very good right now. But again, the level of competition. He finally steps up and fights a guy who's 7-1, who has 8 fights, and he wins via decision because every single other fight on his MMA resume, he has finished. He has 4 submission wins and 1 TKO win. The only time he went to decision was on the Dana White's Contender Series. If you look at Jay Perrin, he comes into this fight on a 2-fight losing streak. He has not won a fight in the UFC. He made his UFC debut in February of this year against Mario Batista. This was a kind of competitive fight, not really. Mario Batista and Jay Perrin, it was competitive, but it wasn't really close. Mario Batista was just outstriking him, took him down a few times, was controlling him against the fence, and just won. I believe it was a 30-27 victory. His last fight was against Orichi Lang back at UFC 278. And this was a fight that I believe Jay Perrin could have got the decision here. This was a close fight. I thought Orichi Lang won the first round. He landed a flying knee, hurt him a couple times. But in the second and third round, it was very close. And the second round really could have went either way. I thought the third round was clearly Jay Perrin, but it was still debatable. And Orichi Lang ends up getting the victory. I just think he landed the better shots. But I truly believe this fight could have went either way. You look at his resume in general, he doesn't have the best resume, but still, he's fought far better competition than Raul Rosas Jr. He's fighting guys, with 12 wins. He's fighting guys with 9 wins. He's not fighting guys who only have 1 or 2 fights in their MMA career. So he's fought some decent competition. It's not the greatest. I'm just saying the guys that he has fought outside of the UFC at Cage Titans have far more experience than a lot of Raul Rosas Jr.'s opponents. So when I look at this fight from a stylistic standpoint, I see a guy in Jay Perrin who's very well-rounded, but he's not particularly great anywhere. Doesn't have the greatest takedown defense, doesn't have the greatest takedown offense. Used a little bit of his takedowns in the Orichi Lang fight to, win the third round and had some success in the second round, but he's not a guy that's going to go out there, take you down, and hold you down for 3 rounds. He's not a guy that's some elite kickboxer. He's just very well-rounded, good everywhere, but not great. Now, Raul Rosas Jr., his style is he wants to come out there, he wants to wrestle you, he wants to get you to the ground, and he wants to finish you via submission. That is his style. He wants to get you down and submit you. And I think in this fight, Raul Rosas Jr. is going to come out and start looking for takedowns against Jay Perrin. But I do believe that Raul Rosas Jr.'s striking is pretty good as well. It's still evolving, obviously, still very young. And I'm not sure how good it is just because of the limited tape that we have on him. And the majority of his fights, he's shooting on takedowns and then getting submissions. So it's really hard to gauge how good his striking is. And, the best opponent he's ever fought was, had 7 fights in his MMA career, and he grappled for the majority of that fight as well. So I think he's very dynamic. I think he could find a KO shot, but I think most likely for Raul Rosas Jr., I think if he wins this fight, he probably wins via submission or decision. And I think for Jay Perrin, I think there's a chance if he can stuff the takedowns, he could win via KO, TKO, or I could also see a Jay Perrin via decision. Now, this fight's a very hard fight to pick. I haven't seen a lot of tape on both guys. I've just seen their most recent fights. And for Raul Rosas Jr., it's hard for me to get by the resume. And I understand he's still young. It's not his fault. He hasn't fought the best competition. You got to start somewhere. But for me, looking at the level of competition, I could really see Jay Perrin going out there, stuffing the takedowns, kicking the legs of Raul Rosas Jr., landing some good shots on the feet, mixing in some clinch work, and winning this fight via decision. But Raul Rosas Jr. is fast. He's athletic. He has dynamic striking. He has pretty good grappling. Jay Perrin doesn't have the best takedown defense. So for my official prediction, I am going to go Raul Rosas Jr. via decision. I just think he's going to put everything together. I think he's going to have decent striking. I think he's going to find good entries, look for takedowns against Jay Perrin. When he can't get the takedown, he's going to try to control him against the cage. I think, we're going to see a Raul Rosas Jr. who ends up in some bad positions against Jay Perrin, where maybe Jay Perrin reverses, gets on top. But I think Raul Rosas Jr. is good enough on the ground. He'll be able to scramble out of the positions. And he showed some very good flexibility as well in that last fight against Mando Gutierrez. And, he just finds his way to worm out of certain situations. And I think this is going to be a competitive fight. I think it's going to be a good test for Raul Rosas Jr. I think it's going to be some good experience. I think he's going to get busted up a little bit by Jay Perrin. But I just think the combination of mixing in that grappling, getting some takedowns, looking for submissions, maybe Jay Perrin scrambles back to his feet. I am going to go with a Raul Rosas Jr. 29-28. He's going to lose a round in there somewhere where Jay Perrin lands some good shots, maybe stuffs a couple takedowns, and then, but the other rounds, I think Raul Rosas Jr. is just going to land some good shots, maybe get a couple takedowns, get a little bit of control time in the bank. But I think it's going to be a close fight. I think it could even maybe be a controversial decision. but I think Raul Rosas Jr. is going to come out on top. Jay Perrin has an amazing chin. He showed good cardio. He outlasted his opponent in the last fight. In the third round, he had far better cardio than Arichi Lang. Raul Rosas Jr. in his last fight was scrambling a lot, was shooting for takedowns, was throwing wild techniques. He didn't appear tired in the third round, so he has really good stamina as well. I just really have a hard time seeing either one of these guys getting finished. But I could also maybe see a Raul Rosas Jr. submission. But I think Jay Perrin is too durable. I think he's too tough. And I think he's going to be able to survive, make it a very competitive fight. And I'm going Raul Rosas Jr. via decision. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video. And if you enjoy UFC predictions, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. And I will see you in the next video.